Okay, welcome to Into the Channel podcast, primarily about women's football. Before we hit the pitch, if you enjoy the show or love women's football as much as your boys do, come kick it with us already. Subscribe, follow YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to watch or listen. Leave us a review over your favorite podcast app. Links to all of our socials in the show notes of this episode. I am your host, Dino de Cespedes, and I am joined by a returning guest and my co-host, Mr. Grant Engel. What's up, man?
I'm feeling fantastic, buddy, and that's because our guest today is making his second appearance on the show, back by popular demand. He's been covering football for more than 20 years. He's covered every major women's international tournament since 2011. Some people call him Vicey. Some people call him Vice City. We call him ITC's Frauen-Bundestrainer, and you can also call him a fantastic reporter from bullynews.com. Please welcome back to the program, Peter Weis.
A pleasure to be here, gentlemen. I absolutely don't know if I can live up to that introduction. Thank you so much for the great coverage over the course of this fantastic tournament. I've enjoyed watching it very much, and I'm very much happy to be back with you and honored to be back with you today. Warm congratulations, by the way, for defeating my country in the semifinals yet again and making it to the gold medal match. I wish you all the best of luck, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that, I suppose, quite soon.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. You know, Grant and I dug deep out there, put in a full 90 plus, gave it our all, and here we are. We're in the gold medal match. We made it. And no pressure, Vicey, but you're now at the top of the leaderboard, right alongside Asil Tufaili and DAZN's Cameron Pope as most appearances on the show. No pressure.
Not at all, gentlemen. It's an absolute pleasure, an absolute pleasure.
For us as well. Thanks again for joining us. I usually ask Grant here where we want to get started, but let's skirt around that. Let's just say yesterday's action, USA won, Germany 0. The sort of knockdown, drag out, needed 120 plus to kind of get all the way through that one. So, Peter, what was your biggest takeaway from yesterday's match?
Well, the attendance figures were not necessarily what we might have hoped for. The German women in their send-off match, since we've last spoken, the German women have played 2 European qualifiers plus the Olympics matches. They got 40,000 in Hanover when they beat Austria. I think, 15,000 in Marseille yesterday? So not much. But thanks to that, I heard Horst Hrubesch on the pitch, shouting at his Mädels, screaming, "Genauso macht das! Das ist genauso! Weiter, 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 weiter!" 73-year-old man screaming at his Mädels in what will be, of course, his penultimate match in charge of the German women's national team. After that, he's surely going to retire at the age of 73. Sometimes in German football, you get a Friedhelm Funkel or something like this who's prepared to keep coaching into his late 70s. But him screaming at the Mädels, giving Nicole Anyomi a hug after an excellent tackle near the end of the first half, that was my biggest takeaway from this. I think the Mädels did not deliver a disappointing match in this tournament from my perspective. And that includes the 1-4 defeat to the USA in the group phase. I think the scoreline was rather misleading in that case. They, of course, gave it their all. They left it all on the pitch. We were missing some players due to hard luck injury and also general exhaustion. Tournament football is a rough beast, but they have fulfilled our expectations. They made the semifinals. In any tournament that has a third place playoff, that means we get maximum matches and the maximum amount of chances to wave our German flags. So I'm quite satisfied.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with you. I don't think they had a disappointing performance in the bunch. And I'm glad you bring up that initial, the group stage match, the 4-1 defeat. When we talked about it, you know, there was a chance for Germany there when it was 3-1, where Germany could have pretty easily made it 3-2. They were a little unlucky on that chance. And then you have a different football match after that. From your perspective, what was the difference between that group stage match and what we saw yesterday?
Well, the most important difference were the absences, of course. Lea Schüller had some knee inflammation. Alexandra Popp, once again, heartbreaking. It reminds you of that European Championship final 2 years ago when she had to withdraw at the last moment. She was completely finished after 120 minutes against Canada. And in her post-match interview, she essentially said she paid homage to Per Mertesacker, the notorious big effing German, who at the end of the Algeria round of 16 fixture in the World Cup 2014, gave a famous post-match interview in which he just said he was essentially exhausted. He didn't want to answer any questions. He wanted to spend 3 days in the ice bath. Popp paid homage to that And later on her Instagram feed yesterday, she noted that her level of exhaustion after that Canadian match left her susceptible to infection.
Wow.
So indeed, she admitted that she caught this cold because she had just simply worked too hard throughout the course of the tournament, and bravo to her for doing so. So we didn't have Schröder and we didn't have Pop, and as a result, Hrubesch put together a 4-4-2, which I believe was actually quite effective. Nicole Agnomi, who was not initially on the tournament roster, she was one of the reserves, was called into action. Jule Brand moved up to pair with her in a two-striker set. You had Sydney Lohmann and Clara Bühl handling the wings, Lohmann in Brand's position, Minge and Nüsken, whom has had an interesting tournament. I think that Nüsken has not really, she's been moved around so many different times. She's had so many different tactical assignments that she never really got comfortable. So that was a player that we were discussing in our previous pod that we had just amazing expectations for. But I think all of the various assignments just left her unable to get into a rhythm. So this 4-4-2, the clear aim of this, and I'm sure you noticed this as well, gentlemen, was to maintain a tight shape and frustrate the United States through hard defensive work and fouls. I think, how many? 20 fouls from the German team in this. And I don't consider them, I didn't really consider any of them very dirty, even though there were a pair of bookings for Brand and Hegering before it was all out. But this was just sort of a grit your teeth and bear it, weather the storm kind of tactical approach, at least in the first half. And we had great difficulty coping with your exceptionally talented team. Trinity Rodman absolutely destroyed Felicitas Rauch on the U.S. right. Swanson was also very active. Gwynn had difficulty coping with her. Oftentimes, the U.S. played sort of out of a back three, it looked like, which is common. That actually happened under the two previous trainers. I mean, if you have Crystal Dunn in a back four, it's going to turn into a back three. She's a trained striker after all. The unquestionable player of the match was Naomi Girma, the central defender, not only because of her work, defensive work, but she supplied, as she always does, creative sparks in getting the play moving. So essentially, I think we held out as long as we could and did a reasonably a decent job of weathering this storm, so to speak. But then in the second consecutive extra time match, Rauch misjudged a pass from Swanson, and that's how we get the goal from Sophia Smith. So exhaustion played a role. Our Mädels did very, very well. They supported one another very, very well, I think. But it just, in extra time, there was that one momentary lapse, and that's all it took. That's my take on it. I'd be interested to get your takes on it as well, because I've enjoyed your coverage so much throughout the tournament.
For sure. I think it was impressive to see, obviously, a shorthanded German side really pack it in defensively, just not allow for a lot of space. I think it was interesting that the U.S. over this tournament has been utilizing, the left-hand side, the right-hand side to kind of like initiate things. And then the goal ends up coming just 3 consecutive passes up the center of the park, sort of caught Germany a little off guard. But credit to that German defense, 94 minutes of scoreless football against this high-powered and completely intact U.S. roster. So another quick question about yesterday's semis. Did you notice anything specifically defensively that you found impressive? Say, okay, I like this setup, and I think 4-1 probably not the most indicative scoreline the first time around, but I think defensively a really great performance, like we said, to hold this U.S. side scoreless for the full 90.
Indeed. I hope everybody had a chance to check out Marina Hegering's nice little bit of defensive work there. I think that's making the rounds on YouTube now and collecting thousands of hits. I highly recommend that everybody sees it. We had I think our best defense out there. And Julia Gwynn, who was wearing the captain's armband in Pop's absence, did a fantastic job of organizing everyone and making sure that the U.S. approach play, as variable as it was, because oftentimes in the U.S. builds, Dunn was coming forward, and the back three was pressing high with German sort of a pivot position. So Gwynn was very, very vocal on the pitch. Speaking of the attendance figures, you could hear her yelling and organizing the Mädels in Pop's absence. And she was particularly, I think, good at making sure that Nüsken was marking the midfield there of Coffey and Haran. Haran has had an interesting tournament. I think that she's caught much more flack than she deserves, in part because I think some of her set piece play has been a little suspect. But she is a very, very difficult player to play against in the midfield because she, does. I mean, she can always organize a split stagger when it comes to both approach play and counter plays. I think that the U.S. counters were also very, very strong in this match. And Germany did a very good job of absorbing them and sort of bow arcing it out. What I mean by bow arcing is, they'll get in a solid tackle, then they'll run it through the defensive ranks from left back to right back just to sort of calm things down a little bit and make sure that, the next approach play conserves some energy and doesn't allow the other team to get into too much of a rhythm. There were many, many highlights. Hegering's bit of defending. And then, the tactical fouls. Both Hegering and Brand were rightly booked for tactical fouls. I'm a huge proponent of fair play, but in some cases, things like that are just absolutely necessary. You know what? We haven't talked about your girl Berger, Ann-Katrin Berger. When we first met, when we first sat down to do this pod, we mentioned her. I knew very, very little about her because she's an NWSL professional. When we last spoke, Merle Froms was still the Germany number one, but after an error-filled performance against Iceland in the penultimate match before the Olympics, and Berger's amazing performance against Austria, in which she collected 2 assists. Amazing. And then, of course, she went on to effectively write her own fairy tale. Maybe storybook is a better way of describing that than fairy tale. But my goodness, what a tournament from her. It's been a pleasure to make her acquaintance. She bailed the Germany team out against Canada multiple times in the quarterfinals, and you've already talked about this. Then she saves 2 penalties and converts 1. This could have easily been 3 to 4-0 were it not for Berger. So I suppose the answer to the question, and we came to it in a roundabout way, as I sometimes do, is Berger's performance defensively. She has been incredible, and it's an incredible story. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about her? Because she's on your beat. She's on your end of the pond.
So she comes over to Gotham FC, which is in New Jersey, New York area, they say. We knew she's coming from Chelsea. She's 33 years old. Dino and I are relatively new to women's football. I think just only the past few years. Our interest was sparked and it inspired all this that we're doing right now. So I didn't know a ton about her, but, I knew that Merle Froms was the number one over there in Germany, but we knew Berger had all that time at Chelsea and that she had a good career over there. But she walked into the NWSL and was immediately announced herself as one of the best keepers in the league and has put on a ton of great performances. You talk about the passing with the assists. She just has like an instinctive way to like throw players open. She's a field general out there, kind of making sure that people are in the right spot. And then great kick saves, real good flexibility. I'm glad you bring her up because, it's a 1-0 match yesterday. Sophia Smith gets kind of the poke in to get the go-ahead goal in extra time. Is it harsh to look at, and I always give the disclaimer, I am not a goalkeeping expert, but I am curious, is it harsh to say that Berger was kind of caught in between on that? Is this one of those where people say, I didn't like where the goalkeeper was positioned, or is that where she was supposed to be in your view?
I think that she tried to compensate for Rauch's error. I mean, Rauch was in a better position to receive that pass than Smith was. So she did rush out and try to do the sweeper-keeper thing. Germans, of course, love the sweeper-keeper thing. We have ever since Manuel Neuer invented it. In that very same Algeria match that I was referencing earlier, the Per Mertesacker interview, that was the night that Manuel Neuer, the sweeper-keeper, was born. She did not have a perfect tournament. As a matter of fact, she made an egregious error in the Canada match, which was she more than redeemed herself. But Germany could have been eliminated for one of the errors that she made, and Pop actually referenced that in her post-match interview as well. She's a high-risk goalkeeper. Sometimes it's correct to run out, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you need a quick start counter, other times you need to bow arc it out of the back. There were instances in this tournament in which you could tell that, she wasn't judging things correctly. But I would say that to hold her at fault on that goal would be exceedingly hard, particularly considering the big saves that she made, including the second save that she made on Smith in the 120th. I think that was the last play of the game. Just an excellent stop. The better team won. I think Sophia Smith is just so incredible. She scored all 3 of her tournament goals have come against Germany. She's a certified German killer. Had we gone into this tournament with Froms, who one could tell was really on shaky ground in that Iceland match, I don't know if we would have made it out of the group.
Quite possible. Yeah, it's so funny. I kept thinking about the conversation we had right before, because it was like up in the air. We're talking to Froms, talking to Berger, and we didn't. I mean, I'm tangentially familiar with Froms's game. Obviously you see her, representing Germany, and obviously she's a Bundesliga player. But Berger, who we got to see here in the US, as soon as she came over, she was on absolute fire. So we actually recorded last night our official semifinal post game, and Grant and I got into it a little bit. Just the thought exercise of, what if Freigang's header goes in the 119th minute? We go to PKs. We're staring at Berger, who's had like a monster game. Germany's got all the momentum going into that. We talk about penalty kicks as a bit of a coin flip, but that one might have felt a little bit like 40-60, 45-55, even though US, controlled big parts of the match. That was a real scary proposition, and what's going to end up being somewhat of a historic save for the US and Alyssa Nair.
Yeah, that was an interesting play, I thought. Gwyn, maybe just out of frustration in her post-match interview, claimed that was total luck, that was a total fluke, and things like that. I think she was just a little bit crestfallen and wanted to get her frustration out one way or the other. I mean, Nair has been an incredible keeper since she took over in the 2019 Women's World Cup. She already has a world championship under her belt. Maybe that's a good segue into the current state of the women's national team, which has undergone a little bit of a dip. But I think that right now they're back on top of the world. The 4-time world champions are. The transition phase has been traversed. I think that the best 11 is there now. And this sort of post-Alex Morgan, Megan Rapinoe, Tobin Heath era has now finally arrived. Do you agree, gentlemen?
I think I do, and I think it's great that you mentioned those 3 players up front as kind of, they were the stalwarts. They were an absolute nightmare for teams in the 2019 World Cup. Rapinoe, Morgan, Heath, and now you just have Swanson, Smith, Rodman, who kind of have some similar parts to the game, like across each other. Like they all have these similar traits. It certainly feels like the transition is nearing completion. I mean, obviously, I think a gold medal would help people kind of cement that over here. But it's been really fun to watch just how quickly Emma Hayes has been able to look and say, oh yeah, okay, these are the pieces that we have. This is what everybody does best. And then immediately slot them into the right positions. And Sophia Smith talked about it a little bit in her post game of just saying, like, we knew we always had the players. We just needed to be in the right spot. And I don't think it was like a gratuitous shot at Vlatko. Mm-hmm. But I think there was some frustration from the players toward the end of like, man, is this guy really putting us in the right position to win? I think from the results, again, Vlatko's having a good run at Kansas City Current and NWSL. Mm-hmm. I think there is a clear difference between the way Emma Hayes views football and manages a team and the way Vlatko does.
Yeah, well put. Congratulations, you're back on top of the world.
Well, you got one more match to win.
Yeah, we're on top. I agree with Weissy here. As mentioned, got some more football coming up before this tournament officially wraps. I want to talk a little bronze medal matchup. So Germany probably flying pretty high. I think they at least met expectations, if not slightly exceeded expectations in this tournament. Making the semis means that you get to play for a medal. And Germany's facing a Spanish side that looked extremely leggy, extremely exhausted. I want to, slightly pump the brakes on the USA's fully back, because I think in a lot of ways, this was a tournament of attrition. I made reference to this, I think maybe in one of our first episodes where I was like, Spain looks a little, I didn't want to use the word doughy, but like they didn't look as dynamic and like, lightning quick as they had. And obviously, you come off the Champions League win for those Barcelona players or the Champions League season, League F season more generally. You can imagine players maybe took a couple weeks off just to say, okay, this is our break. We know we're going to be back end of July for the Olympics. But this bronze medal match, Germany versus a Spain side that feels a little gettable. Where's your head at, Vice? You want to hear what the expectations are for Friday's match?
Well, we get to wave our flags one more time, and I get to watch Horst Hrubesch one more time. Now, it's interesting, I found how women's football seems to be mirroring the men's game a little bit, as we had Spain defeat England in the Women's World Cup semifinal last summer, and also had Spain defeat England in the Euro semifinal. Spain eliminated Germany in the Euro quarterfinals, and now we're facing them again on the women's side. I've always had enormous respect for women's football in Spain, and this despite the fact that a series of national team coaches always got their tactics wrong, always got their, always got the way that they treated the players wrong. Mm-hmm. Right now, I'm legitimately concerned about a front three that features Caldente, Salma, Navarro. Bonmati is one of my favorite women's players of all time. I think Ona Batle is going to give Felicitas Rauch some serious problems. But here's how I would set Germany up tactically, if I were Horst Hrubesch, for this bronze medal match. So we have Anyomi called up. We also have Freigang, who came in and gave probably one of her best performances in a DFB tricot all year. So the idea then would be to stick with a 4-4-2. We're going to put Anyomi and Freigang together in a two-striker set. We'll keep Brand and Bühl on the wings. We will maintain the midfield of Minge, Nüsken. Rauch, I think, needs to come out. Sari Lindner was the starting left back. Rauch took over for her when she succumbed to infection, I think, after the first match, and I don't know why she's not been able to reclaim that spot. Rauch made several errors in the loss to the United States and, of course, misjudged the pass there as well. I think that slot should belong to Minge. I assume that Gwyn maintains the captaincy. Of course, if Pop is healthy, we'll put her in Minge's place, but still maintain Nüsken. I don't know what the status of Hegering and Henrich are. They both incurred injuries. Hegering is perpetually hurt. So if Hegering can't go, we'll go with Schulze Solano. Instead, if Henry can't go, we'll go with Dorsun. But a 4-4-2, a tight 4-4-2 with a similar match plan of frustrating this Spanish team, breaking up play. I know it's a cliche to talk about Spanish tiki-taka, and I almost want to throw up when talking about it because I've been talking about it as a football writer for 15 years, and I'm tired of people talking about, the Spanish short passing game and all of this stuff. And, tiki-taka is not a religion for them. Just like the Dutch lining up in a 4-3-3 is not religion either. These are two misnomers. These are two urban legends, I would suppose, about football. But the way that Spain are set up in this tournament, in a 4-3-3 usually, is built around a short passing game. I wish, oh how I wish we had Lena Oberdorf. I think the tournament would have turned out so differently because as a solo six, as a sweeper, working in a double six, working a split stagger, hell, working as an 8, she is, absolutely, she's just a wizard. And we miss her. We missed her again. I don't know what we have to. I hope that she'll be fit for the European Championships come next summer in Switzerland, which everyone should attend. Everybody should start making their travel plans right now to come to Switzerland and watch the European Championships next Sunday. So either we do that 4-4-2. I even have an alternative tactical recommendation for Hrubesch, and that is, let's do it. I don't know if you noticed, but the Zambia match in which we were able to exact revenge for that heartbreaking defeat in Fürth last summer, he lined them up in a sort of a 4-1-4-1, in which Brand, Bühl, and Schüller all worked as a three-pronged attacking set. And Pop was with Nüsken together in a double 8 rotating set, with Minge serving as the solo 6, dropping back to be a bolt lock sweeper on a couple of occasions. And that worked, as you know, exceptionally well. The only qualifier there is that we need Schüller to be healthy to spearhead the attack if we're going to line up in a 4-1-4-1, or if we're going to do a 4-3-3 or anything like that. We need her up there because particularly her heading game is necessary if we're going to be working crosses in from Brühl and Brand. But I'll be watching it. I'll be waving my German flag. I'll be giving Horst Hrubesch a fine send-off because I don't know if I'll see the German footballing legend coach a team again. He's stepping down afterwards for Christian Wück. I'm not quite sure I'm excited about that, to be honest. I wish Hrubesch would stay. If you want a prediction, I would probably say that Spain wins 2-1, and I hope that I'm wrong. And of course, as a dual national, I'm speaking to you today from stateside, unlike last time when I was in Germany. I will be rooting for the USWNT, whom I also have a soft spot for and a fond liking for when they're not playing Germany. That's
fair. That's fair game, I think. You lead us right into kind of the last piece that we wanted to kind of wrap up on is, you talk about, I'm going to butcher the name, Hrubesch?
Hrubesch. Horst Hrubesch.
Gotcha.
Actually,
that one.
Not to interrupt.
Please.
There was a U.S. player who came in late on that I had never heard of before. As a matter of fact, the U.S. substitutions were really, really interesting. How she took Haran and Dunn off. That was really weird. It was an interesting little tactical battle, and I think she did a great job. Emma Hayes did. But how does one pronounce Nieschwanger?
Well, it should be pronounced that way. I like the way Nieschwanger sounds, but that would be, in America over here, that would be Jenna Neiswanger.
Ah, okay. It's kind of like, it's not Becky Sauerbrunn, it's Sauerbrunn.
Sauerbrunn.
Okay, I got you.
Gotta hit it with that American swing for sure.
And so thinking with the future in mind, new manager, I mean, just looking at the squad that was out there, understanding that there were some injuries. I mean, Brand 21, Enyomi 24, Nuskin 23, Lohman 24, Buell 23, Gavin 25. Mm-hmm. Like the future feels bright, but I'd love to hear from your perspective, whether the bronze medal is in the cards or not. Especially after those weird send-off matches and the loss to Iceland. What does the runway look like now from your perspective? What does the future kind of hold for this German side?
Well, there's a lot of other players that you didn't mention. There's Vivian Endemann, who we talked a little bit about in the last pot. She is 23. We also has Elisa Sens, who is 26, but she scored that amazing goal off the volley. I don't know, did you guys have a chance to discuss that in one of your previous pods?
I think so. A lot of football lately.
It's tournament football. It's not only exhausting for the players, but it is exhausting for those of us who cover it. As somebody who has covered, for my blog, I covered international tournaments thoroughly and every last team. Yeah, when you get towards the final matches, you start to forget things and sometimes matches run together and stuff like that. And you see the exhaustion on the players, particularly after all these 120-minute matches. But anyway, I digress. We'll get back to your question. I think that Schulze Solano is also one for the future. She is 25. Hegering is, of course, past her prime, and so is Hendrich. I really liked Lynn. It's a shame that she wasn't able to reclaim that left back role for whatever reason. I think that some things have to come together for Vuk. His number one priority, once he takes over this team, is to get some of the players that are underperforming to perform better. And the two best examples of that are going to be the Frankfurt teammates, Anyomi and Freigang. Anyomi, she had a good game defensively, but there were so many instances on attacking sequences in which you could just see that her confidence is not there. And this has been true for club and country for her for quite some time. Freigang continues to exhibit excellent club form, but in the DFB show, she just cannot get into the lineup. So I say that we get these two playing with confidence again. That is the most important thing. Second, we have to rely on a little bit of luck. The problem with a prodigy like Oberdorf is this injury history is really, really piling up, and one starts to get really, really worried. No shortage of amazing players who had just incredible amount of talent, having their careers ended prematurely by injury. I suppose the best example off the top of my head would be Michael Owen, right, for England. So is Lena Oberdorf the next Michael Owen? I sincerely hope not, because we would all be robbed of just an amazing talent and somebody who really understands the game and makes the game beautiful in so many different ways. Pop too. I fully anticipate that she will still be captaining the squad for next summer's Euros. I think that she deserves it, and this will be her swan song. This will be her last one. But she's got to remain fit and healthy. She's been struggling with injury for so long, and she filled in for Oberdorf this tournament. And it was the physical demands of that assignment that eventually led to her catching this cold and not being available for a crucial match again. So we need some luck. When it comes to women's football, I think strength and conditioning is so immensely important, because these girls don't always have the best strength and conditioning coaches at their clubs. We talk about the differences between the two sports, men's and women. And we even talked about college athletics a little bit in our last podcast. I personally hold women's athletics and college athletics to a different standard. I don't boo. I don't shout. I try to keep things more positive, because we're talking about athletes who are either not compensated at all or very, very poorly compensated. And another aspect of the women's game is that the strength and conditioning coaches are uneven across the clubs. And this is why we see so many ACL tears in the women's game. Well, it's a confluence of reasons. But I mean, women with their hips, it can be a little bit easier for them to tear a ligament. But they're also like wearing boots that were designed for men. They're not receiving proper, conditioning and training at their clubs. Some of them don't even play football full time. So they're working other jobs, and that's putting additional stress on their bodies and maybe leading them to have some problems with general nutrition and stuff like this. So getting some players more confident, and for the love of God, I hope that we have in the new coaching regime, we really need some quality strength and conditioning coaching from the new coaching regime. And that applies to Germany and women's football in general, because unfortunately, they're not receiving the best. I mean, what do you think about that?
I totally agree. I think, you see in like big sports organizations, especially in like the last 20 years, especially sports science is miles and miles ahead of where it used to. And that's the strength and conditioning part and nutrition. And, Dino's favorite NBA team is the Miami Heat. And they were like leaders in that space pretty early on. And that has created a big advantage for their organization.
I mean, it's a good point, because you think about an international tournament like this. Let's take a team like Zambia, right? Zambia's got players in the NWSL. They've got players in Kazakhstan. They had some players in Spain. Imagine bringing all these national team players together, and they all experience different strength and conditioning programs at their various clubs where they spend most of their time. And now it's like the warm-ups are different, the stretching, the routine, and the fitness level is different. So, I mean, it's a tremendous point where I think as that starts to elevate, I think it definitely helps the game in a massive, massive way. With that said, thanks again, Peter. Really appreciate you joining us. Very much appreciate you shouting out my guy, Per Mertesacker, twice on the show. What a legend. Both you guys, absolute legends. So very much appreciate that. That'll get you a third appearance on the show. No doubt. Arsenal legend. So definitely appreciate you joining us. Gentlemen, anything else we want to hit before we get out of here?
No, I think we covered it. I'm looking forward to watching these, like Peter said, this young German side kind of develop. I think Euros are going to be very, very interesting next year. Great advice from Peter to make sure that we're saving, make sure we can get our way out to Switzerland next year for the Euros. But I think that's it for me.
Well, I don't recall if we left a little bit from my blog in the last one. But the most important message that I have when I finally closed the blog down, and the Women's Euros in 2022 was the last tournament that I covered. Once again, put your money where your mouth is and buy a ticket. That is the most important thing that we can do for women's football, is show up. And the Switzerland Euros are going to be fantastic. I cordially invite everyone over to my side of the pond. I live in southwest Germany, which is not far from the Swiss border. It is a small country, so you can coordinate, you can hit up all of these matches next summer and just plan yourself a wonderful vacation. Book your flights now. The tickets are going to be widely available, and you don't have to worry about when they're going to be released or anything like that. You can buy them on the day of the match if you like. But come on over to Europe for the 2025 UEFA Women's Euros. Hopefully Germany will reclaim their superiority. We were 7-time European champions before the Dutch and the English claimed the last 2 crowns. But everybody, come on over to Europe. Come on over to my neck of the woods. We've got an amazing tournament next summer.
Love it. We'll be there. Just got to iron out that small business of finding a couple sponsors to, get us out there. We don't need anything major, just some room and board, couple flights, direct if we can. Seattle's a long trip. Maybe you wanted to take a little quick stop in New York. We'll coordinate it, but we'll a little back office business stuff to handle before we get out there. But I think you can count on your boys being out there. Would love to kind of get out there with you, crack a cold one, maybe do a little live show, get everybody together, have some fun, and do our part to grab some of those tickets and support. We know it's going to be an excellent tournament, so very excited about that. All right, gentlemen, I think we did it. This has been another episode of Into the Channel. Sincere thank you for watching, listening, following, liking, subscribing, just plain hanging out with all of your boys. And remember to like if you liked, and subscribe or follow Into the Channel, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to watch or listen. Leave us a review over at your favorite podcast app. Links to all of our socials in the show notes of this episode. Big thank you to my co-host as well, and to our special guest, Mr. Peter Weis. Mr. Grand Angle, I appreciate you, bro.
Likewise, Peter, thank you again for joining us. We will be watching very closely. Excited to see your Medell's take on Spain on Friday. For everybody else, we will talk to you next time.
Keep up the good work.
Appreciate it, man.